For context, I had been with my ex-fiancé, Rob, for 3 years when we got engaged and when he decided to start cheating on me with my sister. My sister, Nora, is 2 years younger than me and was always a jealous brat. Whatever I wanted, she always wanted the exact same thing, and most of the time, she got her way. Our parents would totally coddle her the entire time she was growing up, and I guess that's why she grew up to be a spoiled, entitled, and insecure brat. It didn't bother me that she always got her way, it also got on my nerves that she was a huge copycat, and then, she would pretend like I was the one copying her. Whenever we even thought about these things, my parents would intervene and ask me to let it go since these were petty things, and I needed to be the bigger person. But honestly, I was sick of being the bigger person all the time just because I was older, and eventually, my relationship with my sister became really bitter, and I was glad to leave for college because that meant that I wouldn't have to stay in the same house as them anymore. And college is where I met Rob and we became friends. He was the one who asked me out after almost 2 years of crushing on each other, but never making a move because we were too scared to ruin our friendship. But I guess around the time we graduated, he worked up the nerve to finally do it, and I said yes to going out with him, which was probably the biggest mistake of my life. Because after dating for 3 years, he decided to ask me to marry him, and once again, I said yes. We had already met each other's families by then, but because I was not very close to my family, he had only met my folks a handful of times. However, after we got engaged, there were a lot of instances where he met my family more and included Nora. I never really suspected anything because when the two of us were together, Rob never gave me a reason to doubt him. He seemed pretty head over heels in love with me and I loved him, so for me to even think that he would end up cheating on me with Nora, it seemed too unlikely to happen. Now, looking back on it, I guess he was just a really good actor and did a fantastic job of convincing me that nothing was going on when in fact, he and Nora had started flirting behind my back a couple of weeks after we got engaged. Of course, Nora had been the one to initiate it. I know that for a fact because she had confessed to it. And Rob had held back for about a month or so before he finally started responding to her advances. Unfortunately, by the time I even found out about any of this, there was just 1 week left to go for my wedding. The only reason they had even decided to tell me that they had started having an affair was because Nora had managed to get herself knocked up by Rob, and by the time they told me about it, she was already 9 weeks along. Pretty much everybody knew about it before I did, which is why they had called for a family meeting a week before my wedding, and I had actually expected it to be a surprise for me or something, but I had left this so-called meeting in tears that day, and 2 years have passed since then, but it's still the worst day of my life. My parents were there, Rob's parents were there, and of course, Rob and Nora were also there. They sat me down and the two of them told me that a couple of weeks after my engagement, Nora had reached out to Rob and started flirting with him, and he hadn't responded at first, but slowly, he started warming up to her because she was funny and kind of cute. They figured that it was just a bit of harmless flirting, and at first, they were just joking around, so it seemed like banter, but before they even knew it, they had started falling for each other. Nora told me that she had only started flirting with him because she felt like messing with me, but apparently, according to her claims, she did not have any actual intention of ruining our relationship or falling in love with my fiancé. And as for Rob, his excuse was that he had just started thinking about life after marriage, and this was his way of relieving the stress that he was feeling about the upcoming wedding and stuff. Both of them had pretty lame excuses, and I definitely didn't believe what Nora was saying about her not having any intentions of ruining anything for me and that the affair had just happened out of the blue. The bottom line was that my fiancé had cheated on me with my sister, and now, Nora was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. Not just that, they were apparently also in love with each other and wanted to marry each other, which is why they had told their parents, and the family meeting had been called so that I could be informed. Everything had already been decided, they had just wanted to let me know about it, and it's not like I could do anything about the situation at that point, so I just had to deal with it. The families had been told the truth about a week before me, 2 weeks after Nora and Rob found out that she was pregnant, and all of them had discussed the way to go about this in the future and had come to the conclusion that I just had to deal with it because obviously, Rob couldn't marry me anymore. They started to apologize to me, but that was when I decided that I had had enough, and until then, I had just been sitting quietly because I was in disbelief of what I was hearing. But when I realized that they were all telling me the truth, and this was actually happening, I lost it and I started screaming at everyone. I was really frustrated, hurt, and confused, and it all just came out at once. Most of all, I was upset with Rob and Nora because they were the main culprits here. I screamed at Rob for almost 5 whole minutes and cursed him out, and he just heard me out quietly, and then, I finally addressed Nora and told her that I didn't buy any of the baloney that she had been feeding to everyone else, that she did not have any intention of ruining my relationship with my fiancé because knowing the kind of person that's probably what she had wanted all along, and now that she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby, she was probably very proud of herself. She started crying and apologizing, telling me that she really didn't have any intention of going so far and that I had every right to be mad, but she just wanted me to know that she didn't intend to do something like this. But I just couldn't take it anymore. I ended up slapping her right across her face and then she stayed silent. After that slap, nobody had anything to say anymore and I left. That was the last time that I saw Rob, Nora, or anybody else from my family in person. I cut all of them out of my life completely, and 2 weeks later, I heard from a couple of friends that Rob and Nora got married in a private ceremony with just their families. By then, I had made a lot of changes to my life so that I wouldn't have to run into Rob ever again. I had packed all my stuff and moved in with a friend and had even applied for a transfer to a different branch of my company so I could get away from this place for a while. It was difficult for me to completely extract myself from the situation, but within a month, I was in a different city, and at least physically, I was far away from everybody. But mentally, I was still stuck in the same place and I started developing serious drinking problems. I went through depression, and since I was in a new city with hardly any friends and no family, there was nobody to help me out and I didn't feel like reaching out to anyone either. Eventually, I stopped showing up at work too, and within a couple of weeks, they had fired me, but I still stayed there for about 2 or 3 months more. I stayed away from my hometown in that new city for a while after I was laid off, just so that I could escape from everything until I finally ran out of money. I was so broke that I could hardly even afford flight tickets back home, but somehow, I sold some stuff of mine and managed to scrape by to return here. By then, I had finally started to realize just how royally had messed everything up for myself, and I didn't even have enough money to drink, which meant that I had to suffer withdrawal symptoms along with depression. In my head, I was over. But I guess there was just something in me that refused to give up that easily, so I flew back home and showed up at my best friend's house. Kylie, my best friend, had been my platonic soulmate since I was in kindergarten, and when I showed up at her house, I hadn't even been speaking to her because I wanted to forget everyone and everything. But when I asked her to help me out and broke down at her doorstep, she took me in, no questions asked. For that, I'll always be grateful, because when I couldn't turn to my own family, she was the one who looked after me. It was evident from my physical appearance that I was going through some serious problems, and she took care of me, helped me apply to new jobs, and let me live with her rent-free for almost 3 months until I finally felt healthier. She put me in touch with AA support groups and was even considering rehab, but I didn't want that. I was lucky enough to get better without rehab, and I even managed to land a decent job at a different company. I still stayed with her even after I got a job again, and she let me live with her for almost 8 months before I finally felt ready to live on my own again. And by then, I could tell that her boyfriend wanted to move in with her, and so did she, but they had been holding off on that for my sake. I didn't want her to make any more sacrifices for me, so I decided to move out after 8 months of staying with her, and even though I was still struggling to cope with everything mentally, I did feel much better, and soon enough, I was back on my feet. Almost 2 years have passed since my wedding got called off, and I have had no contact with anybody from my family since then. After I left, nobody even bothered to reach out to me, not even to apologize one last time. I wasn't close with my extended family anyway, and once I stopped speaking to my parents, I cut the rest of my family out of my life as well. And once our friends had found out what Rob had done, they had cut him off as well. So I had absolutely no clue what had been going on with them for the past 2 years. But 3 weeks ago, I heard from a couple of friends that Rob had unfortunately been in an accident and had succumbed to his injuries after fighting for his life for 4 days in the hospital. It had come as a huge shock to me, and I had even attended his funeral, but had left before anybody could spot me, because in spite of everything that had happened, he and I had been close at one point in time, and I just couldn't believe that he was gone. If I'm being honest, I still haven't come to terms with it fully. It's not like I'm still in love with him or that I haven't been able to move on, but I don't know how to explain it. It's just a huge shock because nobody could ever see this coming, and it's difficult to accept somebody's passing, even when you hate that person. And as if that shock wasn't bad enough, my mother showed up at my house with Nora and Rob's daughter a couple of days ago and told me that she needed to talk to me on an urgent basis. I wouldn't have invited her in, but because she had the kid with her, I asked her inside. She told me that she had taken great pains to find out where I lived because none of my friends had been ready to give out my address, and told me that she was really thankful that I had agreed to speak to her. She told me that she knew I had been there at Rob's funeral and that she and the rest of the family were still really sorry about whatever went wrong, but it was beyond their control. And then, she told me that Rob and Nora did get married, but they are still paying for everything that they did wrong with me. My mother then started breaking down and told me that Rob had, of course, had to pay with his life, and that had been his punishment, but what was going through was even worse. Because she has not only lost the love of her life, but now, she's not even sure if her daughter will ever be able to grow up experiencing the love of her parents. And that's how I found out that Nora had been diagnosed with glioblastoma and she has maybe 3 or 4 years to live at best and 1 year at worst. She had been diagnosed about 4 months back, and even with treatment, it's very unlikely that she's going to make it because it's an aggressive form of cancer and people hardly ever make it. The doctors were hopeful because she's still young and has led a healthy lifestyle so far, but even then, it's just going to extend her lifespan for a couple of more years, and chances of making it for more than maybe 5 years are bleak. In the past few months, Nora had still been a little hopeful because at least Rob was around and healthy, and she knew that her daughter would be taken care of because maybe in the future, Rob could remarry and her daughter would have both a mother and a father, or at least just a father. But now, she's absolutely shattered because her daughter has already lost her father to an unexpected accident, and in a couple of years, she's going to be orphaned when Nora leaves her side as well. Of course, my niece is definitely going to have her grandparents, but it's not the same thing, and it's not like my parents or Rob's parents are getting any younger. All of them are already either in their late 40s or in their early 50s, and that's obviously not the ideal age to be raising a child all over again. Besides, Nora believes that even if her daughter's grandparents are up to the task, it's important for her to know that her daughter will have at least one parental figure around even after her demise. That's why my mother had come to me, because after Nora found out that I had been there at Rob's funeral, she got it into her head that I was the only person whom she could trust with the responsibility of raising her daughter after she was gone. What was surprising was that even my parents and Rob's parents believed the same, and that's why my mother had come to speak to me, along with my niece, so I could at least meet her once before making up my mind. She told me that Nora would have come to meet with herself, but she was already not really well and she wasn't sure if I would even want to see her. So my mother had been chosen to speak to me on behalf of the family because she was the only person I had a somewhat normal relationship with back when I was on good terms with them. After she told me the real reason why she had come to speak to me, I had already been thrown for a curveball because I really hadn't seen that coming. And then, she started insisting that I agree to raise my niece as my own daughter after Nora passes away, and told me that they would want me to spend more time with my niece before that as well, so we could get familiar with each other and make the phasing process a bit easier. She told me that everybody in the family agreed that this would be the best way to go about the situation, and at least Nora would have the peace of knowing that her daughter would not miss on the love of her parents after she was gone. And when I didn't say anything because I was in shock, my mom started crying and told me to show them some mercy, in spite of everything that they had done, because ultimately, Nora was turning out to be quite unfortunate, and after all, my niece was still my blood. At that point, I started freaking out a little bit because it was all going too fast, and I told my mother that I couldn't just make up my mind within an hour, especially about a commitment as big as this. I told her that I needed to think about a lot of things, and it wasn't just about what had already happened in the past. Even keeping that aside, this was a huge deal and I couldn't just agree. At first, she told me that Nora would be heartbroken if I refused, and she was already pretty depressed and she would not be able to take it well if my mother went home and told her that I had declined. My mom started pleading with me, and I told her that I just needed some time to think about it. I wasn't accepting and neither was I declining. I just needed some time to think things over, and I really didn't want to get upset in front of my niece because she was pretty young, so I requested my mother to leave so I could have some peace and quiet. Eventually, my mother did leave, but only after making me swear that I would contact her within a week and let her know about my decision. It has already been a couple of days since then, and I still have no idea what to do. I feel terrible about a lot of things, not just whatever had happened in the past. Of course, that still hurts when I think about it, and it hurts even more when I think about what's going on with all of us right now. I'm doing well enough in my life at the moment, but thinking about Nora and everything that she has lost, I honestly think that this punishment that she has received is far greater than everything that she did wrong. I'm just totally lost right now. I don't know what to do, and it's making me feel horrible about myself because even if I forgive Nora, I know that I'm still not ready to raise a child. So Ida for not wanting to adopt my sister's child after she passes away? Edit. My niece's grandparents are more than ready to take on the responsibility of raising her after Nora passes away, but even they agree that they are not exactly the ideal candidates. All the financial aspects of raising a child are going to be taken care of by Nora and everyone else. But that's not even what I'm worried about, because even though I can afford to be a mother right now, speaking from a strictly financial aspect, it's the emotional aspect that worries me. Ultimately, it's Nora's decision, and she, as well as everyone else, believes that I should be the one to raise my niece after Nora passes away because I'll be able to form a maternal bond with her daughter, but the grandparents will always be just that, grandparents. I can understand where it's coming from, but I don't feel ready, and that's the problem here. Update 1. So today was the day that my mom had made me promise to get in touch with her because 1 week has passed since she visited me. She had stuck to her promise and not tried to contact me even once during this past week because I had told her that I needed some time to think and come to my decision, and I wouldn't be able to do that if she constantly kept badgering me. This week has been really difficult because the decision itself had been made. I just didn't know how to come to terms with it myself or how to convey it to the rest of the family. But I had to do it, for my sake and for theirs. So I just called my mother up today, invited her home, and I finally told her that I wouldn't be able to do it. I told her that I have been through a lot in my life, and right now, I was just not in the kind of state of mind where I could even entertain the thought of becoming a mother, much less the mother of Rob and Nora's child. There were already a lot of emotional layers to my decision, and it was all just really complicated, so I tried to keep it as short as possible, and I just told her that I was not ready to be a mother. It was a huge commitment, and I had thought about it really long and hard, and I was just not ready. My mom's reaction was nothing short of hysterical, and she instantly started telling me that it's not like I had to commit to it right now. I still had a couple of years before Nora left, and hopefully, that would be enough for me to make up my mind. But I told her that even then, I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to take her place or whatever, and it would just be really painful for me. My mom started crying, and it was really difficult for me to even talk to her because she just kept repeating that this was going to break Nora's heart, and I felt terrible about it as well, but there was nothing that I could do. Eventually, she managed to gather herself and told me that she understood my decision and respected it, and then, she left. I feel relieved that I was able to tell her what I wanted and stick to it, but I also feel equally terrible about the reaction, and I know this is going to be difficult for Nora, but well, I had to do what I had to do. Update 2. So it has been 3 days since I last met with my mom, and today, in the morning, she called me up and told me that Nora really wanted to speak to me in person. I was not comfortable with that idea because we haven't spoken to each other or even seen each other for 2 years, and now that she's sick, I know that this is really awkward and difficult for both of us. But my mom told me that she had been insisting on it for the past 2 days, and she knew that I wasn't comfortable with that idea, so she had to try to talk Nora out of it, but she was on bent that one thing. After thinking about it for a couple of minutes, I agreed because she was going through enough as it is. I guess at least I could see her once. We never got along in the past, but honestly, at this stage, I just feel bad for her because I don't have it in me to hate somebody who's lost everything. So after work, I went over to my parents' house after almost 2 years and saw my dad first, so I had a bit of an emotional reunion with him and we hugged it out. He apologized to me as well, and then, I finally saw Nora. She had lost a lot of weight and was half of what she used to be as a person. I could see that she was sick, it showed on her face, and on top of that, I'm sure that the loss of her husband has taken a toll on her as well. Basically, she was not doing well, and I could see it. We had an awkward side hug, and then, without wasting any time, she just told me that she was really sorry about what she had done, but she had meant every bit of what she had said that day, that she really did not have any intention of ruining my relationship. As a matter of fact, she hadn't even expected Rob to respond to her advances at any point, because he seemed to be in love with me, and that's why she had been hitting on him, just to get on my nerves without doing any real damage. But that backfired when he started responding, and she kind of did like him, so they ended up taking it too far without thinking about me, and after that, nobody had the courage to reach out to me after what they had done. She told me that she regretted everything, and that she would take it all back in an instant if she could, but she couldn't, so she was just trying to apologize to me and make up for everything that she had put me through. And she also told me that when Rob had been alive, even he had been full of regret about this, and both of them were just really sorry. I didn't want to relive the past, so I just told her that it was fine and I didn't want to think about it anymore because I had moved on from it. After that, she told me that she knew that I had declined to raise her daughter as my own after she passed away, and she could understand my reasons for it, but she also wanted me to know that even if I changed my mind at any point, she would still love for me to take my niece in. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled, and then we chatted about our lives. I spent almost an hour and a half with her before I started feeling tired because I had come straight from work to see her, and she told me to go home. But she also requested me to stay in touch because she would really love to have an opportunity to make things right with me before it was too late, and I could see that she had tears in her eyes. I guess she had been holding that back the entire time that I was there, but towards the end, she couldn't help herself, and neither could I. Neither of us allowed ourselves to cry in front of each other, though, I waited until I got home and then, I cried myself out. Not just about today, but about everything that has happened so far, and it feels like a huge burden has been lifted off of my chest. I don't know what the future is going to be like, but I just hope that I can put the past behind me. Update 3. Hi, guys. So Nora passed away last night, and the reason that I decided to post about it here is because exactly 3 years ago, on this very day, I had visited her for the first time after our huge fallout. It's obviously very tragic, But the timing is nothing short of poetic, and I just had to tell people about it without sounding insensitive. I did keep in touch with Nora in the past 3 years, and we have spent some time together. In the past couple of weeks, when her condition had started deteriorating, the entire family was by her side, almost constantly, and that included me. My feelings about her are complicated at best, and I don't know how to explain it, so I won't even try. But I do have a really close relationship with my niece, and even though I'm still not ready to adopt her or take the place of her mother, she and I have a special bond, and I'm gonna make sure that she knows that no matter what, she's always going to find a parent, friend, and of course, an aunt in me. And to be honest, even if I had been ready to adopt her, I wouldn't have had the heart to take her away from her grandparents right now, because both my parents and Rob's parents need this. I truly hope that they are both in a better place now, and I forgive them for everything. It's not easy, but I don't want to hold anything in my heart against them, not anymore. So I'm letting go.